Hey guys, I hope you're having a fantastic day. So, I'm just bringing you a quick review and a little tutorial how to overclock the AMD Ryzen 5 5500. The thing to keep in mind with these CPUs is that they're not the lottery kings per se. They're heavily binned and not in a good way. There's not much that we can get. I've had 3 of these CPUs, and the max I could get out of them was 4.6, and that was with a lot of voltage, over 1.3 volts. So we'll see today what we can do with this newly arrived 5500. And also, I wanted to talk about the memory that we're going to be using and the timings, because I think that this little CPU has a lot of potential that needs to be explored. So we'll do that today in this video. Hang tight. Alright fellas, here's the RAM that we'll be using today for this tutorial. These are the Patriot Viper. This is a Patriot Viper kit, 3200 megahertz or mega transfers, CL16202020 by default if you enable the XMP profile. These are actually Hynix AJR. Some may have different opinion about the type of ICs. I happen to like it. I know it's if you set the proc ODT where it needs to be, these ICs love overclocking. So yeah, let's get into the video and stop mumbling around. And okay guys, here's the little system. This is my GTX 1080. Usually you want to use a higher end card when doing testing for games, like when you're testing your CPU and stuff like that. But in this case, I'm doing this for the sole purpose of educating or maybe helping those who are not fortunate enough to be able to afford a 4090 and you're running a entry level or mid-range GPU. You can definitely improve your performance by just following this little tutorial here, how to tweak out your memory and CPU, in this case the 5500, even if you have a entry level or lower end graphics card. Alright guys, so let's go for a little drive. So this is just with PPO enabled and XMP enabled. And I wanted to show you guys this live so that you can get an idea what the minimum frames per second looks like. Max is going to be the same because we started inside of the house, but that's where I wanted to start. So we're just cruising along, and again, or I should say, if you look at the GTX 1080 is not even being pushed. It's only at 35% load. It's just cruising along. Now you could say that it is the overclock that will give the advantage in the next round, but it won't affect it as much as you will see. The overclock to the CPU won't make that much of a difference really. What will make a big difference will be the memory tweaking, the memory tuning on this little CPU. So for that reason, like I said, I won't recommend that if you get the CPU that you just enable the XMP profile and then you walk away, because you will be leaving performance on the table. And I know that a lot of the bigger channels have tested this CPU and they trash it and they talk all kinds of nonsense really, because you're not paying 5600 prices for the CPU. You're not paying 12400 Intel 12400 prices for the CPU either. I picked this up at $120 here in the country where I live. So and I know I'm kind of repeating myself here, but this is what you get here is totally a bargain in my opinion. If you just tweak out your memory and do the things I'm going to show you in the BIOS here after this, you will see a boost in performance coming from this little CPU, something that could rival the 5600 at stock settings, because you can argue also that, yeah, you could do the same thing to the 5600 and also perform even better. So yes, of course, but again, for the money that you're paying, this is a really good deal. All right, so as you can see, we're averaging 141 FPS, 142. So let's go ahead and stop the test here and jump into the BIOS and show you what kind of tweaking you can do to boost the performance on the 5500. Okay, so here we are in the BIOS. Now we're going to leave the PBO. We're not going to mess with any CPU overclocking. We're going to actually just tweak out the memory itself. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do, and this can apply to Hynix AJR, DJR, AFR, or MFR. You can do this with Micron eRevision. If you're into memory overclocking, then you know that Samsung B die is just going to be the best in this scenario here, you know, because of the tighter timing. So, but for everything else outside of Samsung B die, I'm talking to you. If you don't have Samsung B die, these are settings that you can, they're pretty universal, that you can do to your memory and get great performance out of it. So the first thing you want to do is enable your XMP profile. Okay. And the reason we want to do this is because by enabling the XMP profile, it also enables proper settings for your processor ohm die termination, like, you know, proc ODT, your driver strengths and things like that. So you want to enable your XMP profile. Don't leave that, in this case, don't leave that disabled. Bump up the memory a little bit. I'll say 1.38 in this case. Take the frequency. Now, if you're on a B550 motherboard or B450 motherboard, this should be pretty, you know, it should be doable. Okay, you should be able to do this. Your FCLK frequency, you want to have that half of what the memory speed is going to be. So in this case, we're going to do 3600. This should be, I think, in my opinion, is doable with most kits out there. So remember, this right here should always be half of this. Okay, so we got our XMP profile. We want the memory speed where we want it to be. We got our Infinity Fabric set manually. This should do it automatically at 3600, but just do it manually, just in case. We're not messing with PBO or curve optimizer. As you can see, everything's on auto. So we're not overclocking the CPU manually, except for PBO. Technically it is overclocking, but anyway, that's a different topic for another time. Okay, so here's where you're going to, you know, the things that you need to do. Okay, so we'll start with 18 to make this stable at 3600. I know that this kit in particular can do 16, 21, 21, but for you, I'm going to do this so that you shouldn't have any issues booting into Windows with these settings. So we'll do 22 across the table here. We'll do 34 here. This one we'll set it to 60, and this is where the performance improvement is going to be. We'll set this to 4. Your TRDS and TRDL. We'll set this to 6. TFOS should be 16. So the thing about TRDS is that TRDS is and the TRDL, mostly TRDS, is linked to 4 active windows. So you want to have you want to set this to 4, so multiply it by 4. So 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, so you want to have 16 here. Okay, so whatever this is, so if it's going to be 6, then you got to multiply that by 4. Okay, so and that's what your TFOS is going to be. So in this case, 4 times 4, it'll be 16. These here we can leave alone. They don't really do much in terms of performance. You want to set these to 4, your SELs. Now your TRFC, in a typical case, you want to set this as low as possible. So we're going to go with 560. I know this kit can do 480, but we'll set it to 560. These here you can leave alone. TRP in most kits 10 is doable. TWRRD, either 3 or 4. If you see that your system is not booting, try 4 instead of 3. I know this system can do 3, or this kit can do 3. We'll leave the rest of these alone. And then your CKE, we set it to 1. Proc ODT, that's all set automatically by the XMP profile. So we'll leave everything else alone. We won't touch anything else. So far, all we've done is just tweak the timings on the memory with PBO enabled. So let's go ahead and restart, save this and restart, and we'll run the game again and see what difference this makes. Okay, so now we load it into Windows. Let's go ahead and, oops, no, we don't want this. We want this here. Okay, so here are your memory timings, tweaked memory timings. Okay. So Zen timings, it's a great tool. You can get this from Tech Power Up, and just go to downloads. Here, system info, timings, and you can get other nifty tools here as well. So yeah, I highly recommend Tech Power Up. Okay, so let's load up the game. And also TM5, Testman 5 is a great tool that you can use for checking your memory for stability. So this is the second thing you want to do after tweaking out your memory timings. You don't want to just start using your system, because if you do that, you may get crashes and a lot of instability. You don't know where it's coming from, and it's probably most likely directly to your bad timings, bad memory settings. So always test your memory after you have done some tweaking. So Testman 5 is a great tool that you can use. So let's go ahead and load into Grand Theft Auto again. Okay, so now we're at we loaded into the game. As you can see, the settings are the same. Nothing has changed. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into story mode. All right, so we start here inside of the house. All right, so our max is 188. Let's go for a drive. And yeah, as we're cruising along, you can see that the GTX 1080 again is not even busting a sweat. This thing is just, the fans are not even on, so it's hardly being used. This is mostly CPU load here. So the CPU is doing most of the logic, the physics here. I'm not that well informed as to how this all works, like the game engine and stuff like that, but that's my understanding that right now it's mostly the CPU using doing all the physics, the logic, and the load is basically taken out of the GPU if you run it at low settings like this. All right, so it looks like at this point we're averaging 147 FPS. All right, so we reached a average of 148 FPS. This is just with the memories tweaked out, so that's an extra 8 frames per second just by tweaking out your memory timings. Now let's go ahead and do some CPU tweaking and see how much more performance we can get out of this thing. Okay, so now we're back in the BIOS. Let's go ahead and do some tweaking to the CPU. Now, for those of you who are on a B450 platform, if you want to find the curve optimizer, you got to go to the advanced tab, scroll down, go to AMD overclocking, accept, go to precision boost overdrive, advanced, and here you have it. Okay, I'm not going to mess with the PBO limits or anything like that. We're just going to leave that on auto. We're not going to mess with the overdrive scalar. This here, okay, this is important. I like to use all cores. I like to just let the system decide which cores are going to boost. You could do per core, it's up to you. I do all cores, and I'll set it to -20. You could set it higher. Maybe your CPU's better silicon than mine. Mine is not able to go above 20, so minus 20 millivolts it is. We'll go to CPU boost clock overdrive or override and enable this, go positive, and then type 200. So remember, CPU boost clock override, positive 200. Okay, this will give you 200 megahertz extra PBO, your CPU overclock. Don't mess with this because obviously the GPU on this CPU is disabled. It's essentially a 5600G, so yeah, it is what it is. And the platform thermal throttle, don't mess with that. Just leave that alone. Okay, so we have given ourselves 200 extra megahertz. We have gone into precision boost overdrive, gone to advanced, and they give us these options here. And all core -20. Okay, just a quick rundown of so far what we have done. Okay, so now let's save this and reboot into the operating system. Okay, so now we're back on the desktop. Let's look at the CPU and what it is doing now. And this is another tool that is handy to have, hardware info. You can download this from Tech Power Up as well. So now we're seeing that the CPU is boosting to 4.45 megahertz or gigahertz, whatever. So yeah, okay. And I don't have a good silicon, so this thing uses a lot of power, but it does that automatically, so I'm not sweating that. Okay, so now we're at 4.45. Okay, let's go ahead and go back into Grand Theft Auto. The memory settings are still the same, 18, 22, 22, 22. Okay, so here we go. We are at the same game graphics settings, 1080p. As you can see, everything is still the same. All right, so now let's load into story mode and see what this looks like. Okay, so let's start our benchmark here. We'll go outside. So now as you can see, we're boosting at 4.45, or it's going to be fluctuating there, but basically it's 4.45. Okay, so we're seeing pretty consistent average frames per second just already as it is. Yeah, so at this point, I think you guys get the point. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so yeah, it's you're gaining what, 10 extra FPS, or no, actually more. This was like 13 extra FPS just by making those changes, tweaking out your memory timings, and also boosting your CPU frequency by messing with your curve optimizer and giving it 200 extra megahertz to the core. So there you have it, guys. That was just I know it was a bit longer than it should have been, or it could have been, but I really wanted to go in depth here to show you what the potential is for this little CPU if you are willing to take your time and do some tweaking to it. So I think I'm going to leave the video here, guys. And this also, by the way, this applies to all video games that are CPU dependent. This will help you in those scenarios. Unless your game is GPU dependent, more heavily, tends to lean more heavily on your GPU, the game it is, then this right here won't really do much for you. But in most games, yes, it will. So it could boost your performance from 10 extra FPS to 15 to 20 FPS I've seen. So in this game here, you're looking at about 13 extra FPS. So it's a good improvement. So yeah, I think I'll leave the video here. You guys take care. I hope you enjoyed it and got some information from it. Take care. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you like the video, you know what to do. If you don't, you also know what to do. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.